before the Anunnaki came, before the genetic intervention, before the veil of forgetting was built into the design of the human being. This earth was not empty. There were beings here, conscious, ancient, operating at a level of spiritual development so far beyond what we currently experience, that the gap between them and us is not a gap in intelligence or technology. It is a gap in what is possible for a conscious being to be, what it can do, what it can perceive, what dimensions of reality it can move through as naturally as you move through a room. You have felt their presence. You may not have known what you were feeling, but every human being who has ever stood in certain places on this earth and felt something ancient and watchful in the air, every person who has ever had a contact in meditation or in dream that felt older than anything human, every person who has sensed that this planet is more inhabited than it appears to the physical eye. That sensing was not imagination. Today I am going to tell you who those beings actually were, where they are now, what they are capable of, whether they are watching, whether they are interacting with the ultimate consciousness more freely than we are, and whether what they can do is something that you, in this body, in this lifetime, can ever access. I am going to answer this from the place of deepest knowing available. No research citations, no hedging. The truth as clearly as it can be spoken. Before the Anunnaki arrived, and before the genetic modification of the human line, the Earth was inhabited by conscious beings who had been here for an enormous span of time. They were not primitive. They were not early versions of modern humans groping towards civilization. They were fully developed conscious souls who had been living on this earth and developing spiritually for so long that their relationship with physical reality was fundamentally different from ours. They did not experience the veil of forgetting that the Anunnaki built into the modified human design. They remembered who they were. They knew they were expressions of the source. They had never been told they were less than that. And so they lived from that knowing continuously, not as a spiritual achievement reached through years of practice, as their natural baseline state of being. Their physical forms were less dense than ours. This is not mythology. Density of physical form is a direct expression of the frequency at which a consciousness operates. The higher the frequency, the less dense the physical expression. These beings operated at a frequency so far above what we currently access that their bodies were closer to what we would call light bodies, physical enough to interact with the material world, refined enough to move between dimensions of reality that our current physical form cannot perceive. They communicated not through language but through direct transmission of consciousness. There was no gap between what one being knew and what another could receive, no distortion through words, no limitation through the linear structure of language. Pure knowing passed directly between aware beings, the way light passes between mirrors. They did not experience time the way we experience time. For us, time is a line, a sequence of moments moving from past to future. For them, time was more like a landscape, a field they could perceive across rather than a river they were carried along by. This is what made what we call seeing the future, or knowing the past, not supernatural abilities for them, but simply the natural operation of a consciousness, not trapped in the linear experience of time that our modified design produces. And yes, they could move through physical space in ways that do not follow the rules of physical locomotion as we understand them. What we call teleportation they experienced as simply shifting their point of presence within the field of consciousness. Because to a being who knows completely that they are not the body but the consciousness, inhabiting the body can be relocated the way you might relocate your attention from one thought to another. The physical follows the consciousness, not the other way around. This is what the original inhabitants of Earth were, not gods in the religious sense, souls so deeply aligned with the source and so free from the veil of forgetting that the capacities of consciousness we currently consider miraculous were simply their ordinary daily experience. They did not leave. I want to say that clearly before anything else. The original conscious inhabitants of this earth did not abandon it when the Anunnaki arrived, and when the modified human experiment began. They did not die. They did not migrate to another planet. They did not cease to exist. They shifted dimension. Because a being operating at their frequency has no need to remain anchored in the densest physical dimension. The physical dimension is the slowest and densest expression of reality. It is the dimension that requires the most effort to inhabit and offers the most limited range of experience compared to the dimensions available to a consciousness operating at higher frequencies. For a being whose natural state is already so close to the source, remaining locked in dense physical form, the way modified humanity is locked in it would be like asking a bird to spend its life underground. The environment simply does not match the nature of the being. They exist in the dimensional layers immediately adjacent to the physical. What various traditions have called the etheric plane, the astral dimension, the realm of the ancestors, the world of the nature spirits. These are not metaphors. They are real dimensions of reality that interpenetrate the physical world completely. They are here, in the same space the physical world occupies, simply at a different frequency that physical senses cannot detect. And from those dimensions, they are not passive. They are not sitting in some distant realm, indifferent to what happens on the earth they have inhabited for far longer than the modified human experiment has existed. They are present, they are aware, and they interact with this earth and with the consciousness of its inhabitants constantly. Through the subtle dimensions, through the dream state, through the moments of genuine inner stillness, when the noise of the conditioned human mind quiets enough for a different quality of communication to become possible. The feeling of being watched that sensitive human beings sometimes experience in nature, particularly in ancient forests, near old bodies of water, on mountains, in places that have not been heavily modified by human activity, that feeling is accurate, not paranoia, perception. The original inhabitants are present in those places in their dimensional form. Watching, tending, maintaining a relationship with the earth that was old before the human experiment began. The beings that indigenous traditions across every continent describe as the ancestors, the nature spirits, the old ones, the watchers, these are not invented entities to explain natural phenomena. They are direct encounters with the original inhabitants of this earth in their current dimensional form. Every culture that has maintained genuine contact with the natural world has maintained genuine contact with these beings. The contact was not lost. The capacity to perceive it was diminished in the modified human design, and further diminished by centuries of a civilization that taught people to dismiss what they could not measure. Yes, completely. And I want to be honest about what that means because it matters for what I am about to tell you. The original inhabitants of this earth interact with the ultimate consciousness the way water interacts with the ocean, not as separate beings reaching towards something external, as expressions of the source that have never fully forgotten what they are. The veil of forgetting that was installed in the modified human design is not something they carry, they remember. Continuously. And remembering continuously means living continuously from the frequency of the source rather than from the frequency of separation and fear that the modified design defaults to. Jesus touched this level briefly and completely during his earthly ministry. The state he demonstrated, the complete transparency to the source, the ability to move physical reality through the frequency of his consciousness, the direct knowing of what was true in situations his physical senses had not perceived. That was a glimpse of what these beings experience as their ordinary baseline. For Jesus, it was an achievement reached through a soul's long journey of development. For the original inhabitants, it is simply what they are, what they have always been, because they were never subjected to the genetic limitation of consciousness that the modified human carries. They do not pray toward the source, they exist within it. They do not seek moments of connection and stillness. They are permanently in the state that human beings glimpse briefly in their deepest moments of meditation or genuine spiritual breakthrough. The difference between us and them in our relationship with the source is not a difference of worthiness or spiritual advancement in the soul sense. It is a difference of design. We were built with a ceiling. They were not. Can we do what they do? The most honest answer: yes. And the answer has a specific shape that I need to give you completely. The soul you are, beneath the modified biological form you currently inhabit, is not inferior to the souls of the original inhabitants. The soul is a direct extension of the source. It does not come in grades. Every soul is equally the source in individualized form. The difference is not in what the soul is. The difference is in what the current vehicle allows the soul to express. The modified human body, with its built-in veil, its genetic limitations on consciousness access, its nervous system wired for survival fear rather than for the open perception of higher dimensions, is a less capable vehicle for soul expression than the light body forms the original inhabitants operate in. But the soul inside the vehicle is the same quality of consciousness, carrying the same potential, connected to the same source. This is the most important thing I can tell you. The limitation is in the vehicle, not in you. And vehicles can be upgraded, not through external technology, through inner development, through the genuine sustained practice of going past the limitations of the vehicle to access the soul underneath it, through the kind of inner alignment that Jesus demonstrated and that every genuine mystic across history has pointed toward, through the daily choice to live from the soul's knowing rather than the vehicle's fear. Every genuine spiritual practice across every tradition is essentially the practice of making the modified human vehicle increasingly transparent to the soul that inhabits it, of thinning the veil from the inside, of gradually restoring access to what was always there beneath the limitation. And as that transparency increases, the capacities that the original inhabitants express naturally begin to become accessible to the modified human. Not all at once, not without genuine sustained work, but genuinely, really, in measurable ways that increase with the depth of the inner work. Teleportation as a physical act is the furthest expression of this development. It requires a level of consciousness transparency that most human beings have not yet reached in this era. But the same principle that produces teleportation in its most developed form produces healing. Intuitive knowing, the movement of physical reality through consciousness, the ability to exist in multiple awareness states simultaneously at earlier stages of its development. And those earlier stages are absolutely accessible to a human being who does the genuine work. We have discussed people on this channel who have demonstrated exactly that. As for finding these beings, you do not find them by looking outward. You find them by going inward far enough that the dimensional barrier between the dense physical and the subtler dimensions begins to thin from your side. They do not hide from human beings who are genuinely developing. They move toward genuine inner development the way light moves toward an opening, because every human soul that genuinely awakens is a restoration of what this earth was before the limitation was installed, and that restoration matters to them. This planet is their home far more than it is ours, in terms of the length and depth of their relationship with it. They want it restored. They support every genuine movement toward that restoration, and they make themselves known to every consciousness that develops far enough to perceive them. You do not need a location. You need a depth. Go deep enough inside yourself, and they are already there, waiting, patient as beings who have existed since before this civilization began, ready to meet any human consciousness that has done enough inner work to cross the threshold where the communication becomes possible. The beings who were here before the Anunnaki modified the human line did not leave. They shifted into the dimensional layers adjacent to the physical world where they have remained, present, aware, tending this earth that is far older in their experience than in ours. They are more freely connected to the ultimate consciousness than we currently are. Not because their souls are greater, because their design was never given a ceiling. They live in the state that Jesus demonstrated briefly and completely, not as an achievement, as their natural home. And yes, you can access what they access, not because you are special, because the soul inside your limited vehicle is the same quality of consciousness that inhabits their light forms. The limitation is in the vehicle. The soul has always been unlimited. The path to what they experience is the path inward. The genuine, sustained work of making the vehicle increasingly transparent to the soul it was designed to contain, but not permanently imprison. They are not far. They are not in another galaxy. They are in the next layer of the same reality you are standing in right now. And they are closer to the human beings who are genuinely doing the inner work than most of those human beings realize. Go deep enough inside yourself, and you will find that you were never alone in this. Not for a single moment of your entire existence on this earth. Share this with someone who has always felt there was more to this world than what the physical eye can see. They were right. Subscribe to Truth Frequency AI. And come back, because the next truth is the one that shows you exactly how to cross the threshold.